Board Gaming Tactics 101. That's what we're going to explore in this vlog, and we're going to take a top-level approach. We're going to take an understanding that within various board games, there are certain strategies, there are certain meta rules, there are certain opportunities that regardless of the title, whether it's Runebound, Zombicide Invader, or Mage Knight, certain aspects of board gaming mechanics, how they flow, how they design, are always going to be present. And if we can identify those, if we can ask some of those questions, build that checklist, and I just named a couple of titles from my collection, but as we go through this checklist together, think of some titles from your collection, then this gives us momentum. This gives us opportunity. And in a game where there is some random, whether it's based on dice or cards, and even Mage Knight has some random in terms of tiles and the various things that spawn. It's not as random as rolling dice, and there is hand management and ways to manipulate dice and gain an advantage. But every board game has some sort of random, ranging from little random to something like Zombicide, Invader, or Black Plague, which I love. Lots of random. So we want to be able to control that random and utilize the momentum of that random. Okay, jumping in. The first question I ask myself, what is the timer on this board game? Now, some games, and I'm going to be exploring aspects from my collection just to illustrate. But again, think of titles in your collection. Some games have a defined timer. Runebound 3rd edition has a 2-tier timer. As you complete each turn, you advance this time token. And certain things spawn, certain things reset. But at the end of the time token, the boss monster becomes active and you move into the end game. Whether you're ready or not, there's a timer. Playing Game of Thrones, playing Axis and Allies, there is a timer. I'm competing with other players, and they're going to be advancing along with me. They're going to be possibly pulling ahead or falling behind. I really can't just take my time, literally in that sense, in terms of tactics. I need to be aware, hey, there is a timer. Talisman, there is a timer. I am racing against the other players on the table. A game like Zombicide, where you're spawning cards. You have a mission, you have to get to the exit, get to a certain point, and every turn, more and more and more zombies are literally spawning at spawn points. I don't have a timer against the other players because we're all playing on the same team, but there is a timer. So I need to identify, what is the timer? Is it open-ended or close-ended? Runebound is closed. You've got 2 tracks and then you're done. Talisman is open. You could go forever and ever and ever. The only timer is literally the other players when they feel they're ready to make the race to the crown of command and claim that for themselves. Is it an open or closed timer? That's going to begin to shape my tactics and explore, in essence, what's the low-hanging fruit? What's the stuff that I can grab and easily boost my character, easily boost some gold? What's the stuff that on the way to another quest or another point on the board, I can quickly snap up? It may or may not be game changers, but it's going to start to give me some additional bonuses, some additional dice. I want to utilize the timer and be as efficient as possible. Now, in terms of items and gear and powers and cards, we see games where sometimes they spawn. In Runebound, at the beginning of the game, you spawn the various markets. And some of the artifacts in the market, like there's a magic axe, there's a magic sword, they'll be like 14, 15 gold. That's a lot of money. On average, you can fight 1 monster a turn. That'll give you 2 to 3 gold. You can take items in a caravan and sell them in one city to another, but that takes time to travel. That might be 2 or 3 turns. That might give you 2 or 3 gold. That assumes no setbacks. We also see this with certain powers and leveling up, where you're part of a game and say, based on my character sheet and abilities, I can grab these levels. That I need to make a decision. That you need to make a decision at the beginning of the game. Are you going to go for these wonder items? Are you going to go for the really powerful power-ups or games that have a skill tree that you want to develop your character? If you're against a timer, what is your plan to develop that? All the resources to make it halfway through the game and then suddenly switch and say, you know what? I am going to go for that 14 gold piece axe. So let me start fighting monsters. I've missed out on efficiency. I've missed out on efficiency. So overall planning. Bonuses. Now, random could be cards that I draw, could be a D6, it could be different types of dice. What am I doing to stack non-variable bonuses? Fritz, what do you mean by that? Magic Sword in Talisman, add +1 to strength. When I attack, I roll a D6 for strength, add my value, and I add that +1. I'm always adding that +1. It's like classic Dungeons and Dragons. You get a +1 sword, you've always got that +1. So what abilities am I looking to develop? Gear, powers, skill trees, again, based on the game, alliances, territories, that are going to give me a constant, guaranteed something. Guaranteed 3 gold a turn. Guaranteed every time I attack +1. Guaranteed every time I draw a power card to replenish, I can replenish a secondary power card. We need to aggressively pursue those because that is going to help give you a slight advantage. But at a certain point, when you get multiple stacks of that, it's going to negate most of your random rolls. Most of the rolls that are not that great or so-so, you'll still be able to make them, of course. If you roll poorly or draw a hand of cards poorly, there's nothing you can do about that. You draw legendary, that's great. But exploring those 3 aspects, that's the primary entry point into the game. Over there, we layer over tactics directly related to the game itself and the tactics itself there. But looking at every title in your collection, how do these 3 aspects layer over, and how are you using them to gain that momentum?